Hi, welcome to the presentation aspect of my semester project for presidential politics. Before I begin, I just want to outline that this presentation is going to focus more on what made Jimmy Carter, and how that affected his presidency and governing style. The paper aspect of my semester project will go more in depth with the Carter presidency and the lessons future presidents can take away from it. This presentation will do the same thing, just in a different way. So I named my presentation Jimmy Carter, Peanut Farmer, Politician, and Public Servant. I thought those three descriptions really described Carter well, especially in the three phases of his life that the book I chose focuses on. So the book I chose was His Very Best by Jonathan Alter. It came out within the last year. It's fairly new. And what Alter does is he goes through Carter's entire life. He starts with his birth in Plains, Georgia, and goes all the way to his post-presidency and his work with the Carter Center. Just as an aside, I would definitely recommend this book to anyone that wanted to learn about Carter, his presidency, or really anything about Carter, because it's very in-depth and unbiased. Alter, in writing the book, he spoke directly to Carter. He had a lot of meetings with Carter over email, in person, over the phone, and he also talked to a lot of people that work in the Carter administration and grew up with Carter. So with that, I will jump into Jimmy Carter. So Jimmy was born to Earl and Lillian Carter in 1924. His parents operated a peanut farm and processing facility called the Carter Peanut Warehouse, which Jimmy would take over later in his life. The Carters had many sharecroppers who lived on their property. They lived in slightly disheveled shacks on their property, but they treated them well and paid them a fair wage. Almost half of Plains, Georgia, was made up of black people, but they were still treated as lesser beings, even though they made up, half of the population there in Plains. Alter wrote about Lillian Carter, his mom. Though she was seen as a progressive at the time for race, she definitely wouldn't be seen as progressive in our time. But as a story Jimmy tells about Lillian is that she wouldn't let black people come through the front door, but she would let them come through the back door, the back kitchen door, and even that was seen as kind of a faux pas in Jim Crow era Georgia. So on the screen, that's the house that Jimmy grew up in. So clearly, he came from humble beginnings. Nothing special. His parents were farmers. And so his mom really influenced Jimmy. Lillian, like I said before, she was progressive for a time, but now she probably wouldn't be considered a progressive. But one of the things that Lillian did to show Jimmy about the black population was to take him to an AME church to hear Bishop Reginald Jackson deliver a sermon. When Jimmy later became governor of Georgia, it was clear how Lillian had influenced him, because he put the first ever portrait of a black person in the Georgia State Capitol, and that was Martin Luther King Jr. He got a lot of fighting from the segregationist state legislatures, or lawmakers, sorry, but he fought and put that into place. His dad, Earl Carter, Earl was a segregationist, but like I said, they paid their sharecroppers a decent wage, and he was never personally rude to black people, but he did not believe in integration or necessarily equal facilities for black people. One thing that Earl taught Jimmy was that if something could be done by himself, he wasn't going to pay anyone to do it, even if that meant learning a new trade or teaching himself how to do something that he didn't know how to do. We would later see that from Jimmy as he ran government, not only at the state level, but at the national level as well. Just an example, Jimmy's first major piece of legislation to come out of his 4 years as governor was a bill that cut State Department funding and reallocated funds to prevent government waste. Jimmy also did this as president in some slightly different ways. So Jimmy actually didn't get into politics until pretty late in life, considering a lot of the other people in politics were wealthy and had kind of started out in politics. After leaving the Navy and coming back to run his farm, Jimmy won his first electoral election, which was he was elected a deacon at Plains Baptist Church. I thought that was interesting. So after he came back to Plains, he won election to the Sumter County Board of Election, where he fought for equal facilities for black students, though Alter was very clear that during this time Carter did not really fight for integration, because he knew the political ramifications of that if he were to get involved in politics later down the road. Later, after working on the school board, he ran for Georgia State Senate seat in 1962 and won re-election in 1964. This is actually the only re-election Jimmy Carter would get in his entire political career. In 1966, he ran for governor and lost. That kind of fueled him to run in 1970, and he won. And then, of course, he ran in 1976 as a political outsider and won. And, of course, he lost in 1980 to Ronald Reagan. So some of the lessons that we can learn from President Carter are not to micromanage. Another lesson is to make friends with people, even if you don't really like them. And another thing is to, just because others want you to back down on your morals, you don't necessarily have to. Maybe sometimes Carter should have, but I think a lesson we can learn is to stand up for your morals and not always to give in. A story often told with this is Carter was in charge of the White House tennis court schedule. That was a true story, but another thing we don't often know is that Carter gave power to the vice president. Before Carter pushed through this legislation, the vice president was not in the chain of command. If the president were to become incapacitated, Carter pushed through that legislation, and he actually gave quite a bit of control to Walter Mondale, his vice president, and kind of gave him control over some departments. I think we might see some of that from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So yeah, that is my presentation on Jimmy Carter. I think we have a lot to learn from Jimmy Carter and his presidency. Carter's often overlooked, but I think you'll see in my paper that he got a lot of things done, but he was kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.